So welcome to today's webinar resident series, A New Phase of Production, Quality, and Growth. It is being presented by Dr. Brian Laskin. And with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce Adam Dreyfus, Director of University, Government, and Institutions. Take it away, Adam.
Oh, good morning, Jessica, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. First and foremost, happy and a healthy new year to everybody, especially my team here at NDX, Dr. Laskin, and all of you are just our dedicated supporting partners. We really do appreciate everything. As I said in previous presentations, and I'll say it today and for numerous times, NDX, myself, Jessica, we're here for you today, tomorrow, and for the future. So please know that we are a resource ready to jump in whenever needed on whatever is needed. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Simple question, complex question, whatever it might be, we're here for you. But I know that you didn't come here this morning to listen to me speak. But without further ado, I want to turn it over to our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Brian Laskin. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I just want to know how busy everybody is and honor the fact that you're here. And I'm going to do everything I can to maximize our time together. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the presentation. Great. And so today we're going to be talking about how to leverage technology to dramatically increase production quality and growth. This is part of the second series. The first series that we talked about a few weeks ago was about mindset and how to set your mind for kind of what is the new phase, as Jessica alluded to, the new phase of dentistry 3.0, as I like to call it, connected dentistry. We're at a point in dentistry where I believe we're shifting from a digital world, which obviously that's going to continue to expand, into what I like to call connected dentistry, where there's going to be a lot more remote care, medical dental connection, aggregation of DSOs, and just large group practices, and then also interoperability of our systems. And that'll be kind of layered through the presentation today. Of course, you can always put questions in the chat, and we'll have time for questions at the end of this short presentation. And again, I want to really just thank NDX also for presenting this series to you. I think that it's just illustrative of how great of a partner that they are, that they're bringing you this overview of all technology, which is kind of what we're going to be going through today. The technologies and kind of how I perceive them, how you should leverage technology. So first off, just as means of disclosure, this is me. I'm part of several different companies in dentistry, and I grew my practice, as we'll talk about in a little bit, over the last 20-some years. But I did sell them not that long ago to Dental Care Alliance. About 5 years ago, I sold the majority of my practices. But we had sort of humble beginnings. My story is not what you would think. The origins of my practice is not what you would think to be what would end up being a successful practice. My first office was at the end of this sort of very humble strip mall that has now been torn down because it was not the best location in the area. You can see Smokey's Superette was the big tenant in the strip mall, and it's even more sketchy than it sounds. But my goal when I got out of dental school, when I first started practicing, was to be the best clinician that I could be. I felt that I had zero confidence, but I felt that if I focused on doing phenomenal clinical care, that was going to be the pathway to success, the successful career in dentistry. And at this small practice of 800 square feet, which is basically 2.5 operatories, and that's it, every day somebody would come in with a broken MODBL pin retained amalgam. So I was quite productive. And so we quickly outgrew this sort of tiny practice that I was in. And I moved to the third floor of an office of a medical center. And so the reason why I moved to this location was that I merged my practice with just a phenomenal craftsman dentist who was kind of a mentor of mine, who mentored me clinically. And his practice was physically larger, but but from a revenue perspective, actually smaller than my first practice. And I felt like if I could get my clinical skills up to his, then that was going to be the pathway to success. And about a month and a half into practice, merging our practices, I had what you could call a moment, right? Where I didn't know if I was going to be able to make payroll that month. You know, because we had just merged practices, the revenue was larger, and so money would come in, and it'd be like, hooray! And then I would pay my team and pay bills, and all the money would go away, and so I was kind of having a moment where I realized that I didn't really understand how to run a successful dental practice. So I hired a consultant, and one of the very first things that we did was to take the paper calendar and put it on the computer. Now, obviously I'm dating myself. This is close to 25 years ago, but that calendar that you see on the left is actually from the 2023 Patterson Dental Catalog. So there's still people who are doing their appointment books by paper. So, which I don't know who's doing that, but obviously that's not efficient. But what I realized after making this sort of first technological change in my practice was that not only was my team, my time expanded, but my team's time was expanded. And I realized that if I could impact my team's time, they had less distraction, less anxiety, and they could focus on doing better care. And so over the next several years, up to now, it's become my personal passion to leverage technology to do the non-productive things as much as possible. And what you'll find, kind of as a cliche, today more than ever, that's more important. We have less team members. We have less skilled team members. Even, if you think about all the great people at NDX, finding a lab that can produce quality at the level of NDX at the scale that they can is very rare and becoming rarer. So the more that we can leverage technology to do things that humans can do, but have to be very skilled to do, that is really where I believe the next frontier with connected dentistry is going to come into play. We'll talk about that in a little bit. My current office now occupies 8,000 square feet. We have 4 full-time general dentists, a periodontist, an endodontist, and really grew the practice through leveraging technology and teamwork to help deliver dentistry from the patient's perspective. My office has been featured in magazines and things, and like I said, I sold it about 5 years ago to a large DSO where I served as innovation officer for a few years and got to understand the workings of a major DSO. And as I joined that DSO, the CEO, the very first time I met him, had one question for me, and that question was, what technologies should we be implementing in our practices? And for me, I was thinking, oh, this is right up my wheelhouse, right? I know all technologies that are available. And number one, we were one of two out of about 400 practices that actually had CAD/CAM. And I am a big component in scanning technology. So the very first thing I thought of was, well, we should implement scanners across the entire organization, right? So my approach was, which one should I choose? There's so many great scanners now. There's the Medit, there's the iTero, there's Cerac, there's 3Shape, there's so many different ones. And I was looking at each one going, which scanner should we put in every single dental practice? Which one of these is the best fit? Maybe that we have to do multiples, or ortho practices have different scanners than general practices. And I was all excited about selecting which technology we're going to use. And it was actually akin, when I look back on it, is what type of electric car should you get? I'm a big electric car fan, so should we get in fact, I just bought a new one last week. A Tesla, the Mustang E, the Lucid, there's Rivian, there's which electric car should we get? Which CAD/CAM system should we get? This high technology for our practices. And then I went to the dental practice. And when I realized that asking which CAD/CAM system to implement into our practices was kind of like, which electric car should we buy for a 10-year-old? Because they were not at the point in their careers and their practices where they were ready for CAD CAM, because there's so many other technologies that would have moved the needle before bringing in CAD CAM. And in a few words, what I learned was that timing is everything. So for your notes, that's one where I would start off. When you're looking at any technology, the first question you should ask is it time? And we'll be talking about how to answer that question in just a little bit. So our goals for today really are simple. We just have a few. Learn how to use technology to advance your practice. And this is either your practice, meaning your clinical skills, or if you're a part owner in a practice or leader in a practice, which I'm a firm believer, as we talked about in the last of the series, that every dentist is a leader in their practice. So how do you use technology within your practice? Know when to add a new piece of technology, how to translate that investment to your team and patients in a way that makes sense. We can't really leverage technology if our team and our patients aren't on board. So next, I want to give you a thinking tool that I've developed to help. It's helped me immensely to answer that question of when should you implement a new technology into your practice. And sometimes these are several $100,000 decisions, right? That warrant really thinking about. So kind of thinking about your thinking is vitally important. And I want to mention here too that salespeople, or if you're out and about and you find a new piece of technology and you're discussing it with the salesperson. And I work a lot with different vendors in technology and dentistry. And I firmly believe that the vast majority of them are very knowledgeable, and they really want to help you make good decisions so you can deliver better care. However, they only have the information about their product, their service, and what they really don't know is your practice and where you are in your clinical technology journey. So they can really only have the tip of the iceberg. And it's up to you to provide the context and that, sort of stereotypically or cliche, the rest of the iceberg that's lying underneath the surface. They have great information and they're looking to help and can provide context. And frankly, if you're working with a great laboratory like NDX, they can provide much more context because they have more than likely a deeper insight into your practice of dentistry. However, it's going to be up to you ultimately to determine if this technology is right for you. And so that tool that I've developed is called the cost of implementation. It's an acronym that to use to determine if a piece of technology is right for you at this moment in time. The C stands for clinical quality. What that means is if we bring in this piece of technology, is it ultimately going to increase our clinical quality? Number two is the O, observations by patients. How does this technology affect the patient experience? S of the dollar sign for ROI is, are we going to get an increase in revenue from this implementing this, or at least more than cover the expenses? And T is for team health. So these are the four pillars that I think make sense to look at any piece of technology through. Now, the first two I like to say are like a light switch. If any piece of technology is going to adversely affect either the clinical quality and the practice of dentistry that we deliver, or if it negatively affects the patient's experience, then we don't implement that ever. It has to at least be a lateral move, and obviously should be a positive. It should positively affect both of those. ROI and team health, oftentimes there's going to be a period of negative. You have to invest some time, energy, and money, which negatively affect the ROI and the team health. That over time will be positive. And sometimes, even if it costs more, it might make sense if it's really increasing the patient experience, because you might be getting more referrals or whatever. And we'll leverage this today as we go through the different technologies. We talked last time, so I won't belabor on this, the level of technologies that we are. So we're going to talk about each technology through the lens of different levels. But beforehand, level 0 was what we talked about last time in this series, which is all about your mindset. And if this as a remember or as a reminder that your mindset can be very simple. Things like systematizing your practice, having your burr block that we talked about last time. How do you prep teeth more efficiently at higher quality so that you actually, every time you prepare a tooth, you are providing higher quality, better patient experience, have a higher ROI, and have a better team health. So if you have a system that you constantly tweak a little bit, iterate over time, then all 4 of these will dramatically increase on your 100th, your 1,000th, your 10,000th restoration versus the first one. So you're practicing dentistry, right, every single time. That's kind of the mindset. So everything we use in our practice really is a technology, including the burr blocks. So it's important to systematize your practice. And I like to look at this through the lens of types of different intelligences. And everybody knows about EQ or IQ, which is the intelligent quotient, how intelligent you are. And it's very common today to talk about about leadership or management, the emotional quotient. But when we're talking about systematizing your practice, it's not really about how much raw intelligence you have or how much emotional intelligence, meaning the soft skills of dentistry, managing the team, which is crucially important. But what we're talking about is XQ, the experience quotient, which is really vital and I think overlooked oftentimes when people talk about how to level up your care. And when we talk about the experience quotient, it's how many times have you done this? And the reason why I bring that up now is that you are probably talking on the other end of the call when you're talking with your NDX laboratory technician. They have tons of experience quotient. So if you're doing a procedure that you haven't done many times, or maybe you're looking at incorporating something or you haven't done it for a long time, chances are the person on the other end of that call may have a lot more XQ about what you're doing than you, and leverage that. You have a great partner in your laboratory with great technicians that have tons of XQ, right? So sometimes you can cheat, meaning you can borrow somebody else's. Sometimes I borrow somebody's IQ. A lot of times I hire people with much higher EQ than me, but you can also lend somebody else's XQ. You can hire a coach, hire a consultant, like I talked about initially, or you can leverage your fantastic laboratory technician who may have done this, all on X procedure 10,000 times to your 10. And so leverage people and their IQ, EQ, and XQ as you motor forward too. Again, another sort of shortcut to success that just falls under level 0 of technology mindset, right? And there's great online courses like you're here today. Hopefully this fulfills the one of those courses where you can gain from. And as you get out and practice, I'm here in Chicago at an entrepreneurial training program. So I'm still taking courses every single week, learning, trying to level up education. I don't think that stops. And because after the pandemic, that's become much easier to do things remotely. And so leverage that. Just a little bit about the mindset, like expanding about what we talked about last time. But getting into the actual technology. So there's 3 different levels of technology that we're going to talk about today. If we don't talk about level 0. Level 1. And level 1, I like to think about as what is expected by patients. Now, not what should be expected by patients, because they've gone to 10 dental practices and witnessed the way dentistry is practiced today. But if you were an alien from outer space that knew everything about how life works in your city, state, and going to different businesses, that people go to Target, they go to Starbucks, they shop on Amazon, and then they learn about, for the first time, what dental care is. What would a patient reasonably expect to have provided from a patient experience in a dental practice? Keeping in mind that our patients have changed, right? And it's a bit cliche to talk about, but I think it's very important. Our patient has transformed from that little device in their hand, from that smiling, happy patient into a very, very distractible squirrel, right? Like I said, our goal in dentistry is to reach people where they are if we want them to elevate their care. And so patients who interact with Amazon and Facebook have a different experience than patients in the past on their phone. And so how does my office compare to those brands, not the other dental practices around? And so what are the technologies that this patient would expect when they interact with a dental practice? And first off, and just like the paper chart, it sounds like it should be table stakes, but it's absolutely not. Having a responsive website that looks good and functions and has the technology that a patient would expect on their mobile device is actually relatively uncommon in dentistry. I would say less than 50% of dental practices have an adequate, responsive website with the tools that a patient would expect. So that's number one. And, when you come up in the first time when I'm presenting this presentation, often when I'm talking about technologies, people are thinking about 3D printing, and obviously they're thinking about AI, and we'll get to all of that. But many of the people who are looking at those technologies haven't gotten the expectations taken care of. So when you think about a responsive website, does that improve our clinical quality? Absolutely, yes. If you have a patient with a dental emergency, and the only way for them to get a hold of your office is to call you, and when they call you, they get a voicemail saying, boy, if you have a dental emergency, call 911, right? That is a massive drop in clinical quality. How big? 1/3 of all dental emergencies end up in the ER today. I mean, that's an embarrassing statistic that we as an industry have to address. So something as simple as a website can dramatically increase the clinical quality that we provide our patients. The patient experience obviously is elevated dramatically. The ROI, I mean, if you're not connecting with people on through the web, they're not going to come to your practice. So it's going to affect your ROI positively. And then your team health, the busiest people in most dental practices are people who man the business systems, the people who are working at the front desk of our dental practices, and having them field phone calls when things could be that communication could be handled asynchronously makes absolutely no sense. So in my opinion, every single dental practice should have a responsive website that is mobile friendly, secure, and allows for patient interaction. So that's technology number one. If you were to do nothing else for your practice except to have this, that would be the most impactful for these four. Similarly, digital x-rays. There are still people, luckily it's getting less and less every year, but the digital x-rays are better in absolutely every way. Higher clinical quality, better experience for patients, they cost less, and it's much better for our team's health. So I believe that in the year 2024, frankly, in the year 2020, if you refuse to put in digital x-rays, you might as well hang up your handpiece. Why? Because there's absolutely no downside. So it's kind of an extreme example of when is the timing right? The timing is right for everybody to have a responsive website and digital x-rays. If not, I would go fix that tomorrow. Similarly with paperless forms. It's so big for team members. Right now, we have a labor crisis in dentistry, and forcing our talented team members who basically go into dentistry to help people to be scanning, shredding, trying to read people's handwriting. It just absolutely makes no sense. I see so many dental practices where they have an iPad, they have one iPad, they're getting 10 new patients coming in every hour. And so they just go back to like a clipboard with paper, and it just dramatically decreases the clinical quality. The patient's experience is horrible. I don't know how you feel. Last time you went to a medical practice and I get past the clipboard and a pen. I look up and I'm like, I just want to leave and go to another practice. 50% of patients do, by the way. 50% of patients will leave a practice, a healthcare practice, if they have a poor digital experience. So it's so bad, it's such a bad experience that half the people will leave if they can get a better digital experience somewhere else. So this is changing rapidly. And obviously it costs less than paper to use digital technologies. People can use their own phones so you can text or email them their forms. And it's much better for your team health. There's so much that we can automate that patients don't, or your team members don't need to read people's handwriting. So this is a technology, again, that should be in every single dental practice. Moving on to another big one that's less ubiquitous than the first three we're talking about, electronic referrals. This is a big thing that we're working on now, but about 50% of dental patients that get referred to a specialist don't end up seeing that specialist. I'll say that again. One half, roughly, I think it's 47% of all dental patients that are referred to a specialist actually don't go to the specialist. I mean, that is crazy because the reason why is because people are given a piece of paper, maybe they're giving some antibiotics and pain meds, start feeling better, and they don't actually follow through with the specialist. So what kind of clinical quality are we providing if we treatment plan something that gets executed on 50%? And actually, that's starting, I don't even know the statistics on how many patients don't follow through with the treatment that the specialist recommends. Because without the lack of communication between the general dentist and the specialist, I would think that drops significantly. So it dramatically increases the clinical quality when we can close the loop on referrals so that you as a general dentist know that patient has seen that specialist, right? And what does that do for your ROI? About each one of these cases that gets referred out, it's about, on average, $1,200 of treatment that gets completed, such that is so we can not just close the loop on clinical quality, but obviously when we do to drive revenue in a dental practice, we have to provide treatment. So when we increase the clinical quality, we also are increasing our revenue, and everybody wins, right? And obviously, it's a much better experience for patients. You're sending the entire information to the specialist so they get better care, and it's much better for your team because nobody's working with pieces of paper and not trying to track things because nothing can actually be tracked in that instance. So e-referrals, I believe, should have the same type of forward momentum, exponential growth that we've had in paperless forms, digital x-rays over the next several years. I believe that e-referrals will be ubiquitously used in dental practices over the next few years. Similarly with case tracking, it's kind of the e-referrals, we're just referring instead of sending to a specialist, you're sending to your laboratory. And like we mentioned, using the XQ of your phenomenal lab technicians of the NDX laboratory team, like if we can have instant secure communication with the laboratory, know when cases are coming back, it's going to increase clinical quality, much better experience for patients, because I can't tell you how many times we've had to reschedule somebody because we didn't know when a case was delayed, or and then you have a chair that's open, so that reduces your ROI, and nobody wants to be talking to that patient at the front desk of your dental practice, letting them know that the implant crown did not come back because there was a issue with the scanner, right? So all of these things are exploding, especially in level one, as you'll see. When we're talking about level one, the expectations for almost all of these, they have a positive increase in all four of the pillars of the cost of implementation. Similar with secure messaging. This you can think of as like Slack or Google Chat, but secure. being able to instantly communicate with your patients, with your laboratory, with your hygienist, with your team members is vitally important. Time in a dental practice is crucial, as you all know. Seconds actually make a big difference in the quality we receive, that we give, the experience our patients have, in our ROI. We can, if somebody has a broken tooth and we can get it taken care of immediately, let's get it taken care of immediately. But to coordinate with your team, it requires sophisticated communication, and doing that securely and instantly is important. And having a system that you can use for ubiquitously across all of the people you work with. And increasingly, through DSOs, if you have 100 dental practices, being able to send a message to all the hygienists saying that we have an emergency meeting about PTO over the holidays, instantly, that, or maybe there's like, I'm in Chicago today and I got a notification that my flight might be delayed or canceled because there's 40-mile-an-hour winds, right? If there's a weather event in your area, being able to securely message everybody instantly can be a huge level up for every one of the pillars of the cost of implementation. So those are my level 1 technologies, what I would think that every single dental practice in the year 2024 should implement if they haven't already. And you might find that most practices don't. For example, most practices don't use a secure messaging platform, e-referrals, lab tracking software. Those are gaps that I think are just obvious no-brainers for everybody. And there's still a lot of dental practices that aren't using paperless forms. As we go through the levels, there are technologies that may be more commonly used in dental practices. But what we're talking about is the technologies in level 1 that will pay for the technologies in level 2 and level 3. Because as we do the simple things, like, another one I could have added to level 1 probably is online payments, right? If you can text somebody and then they pay you, but in the interest of time, we can only go over so many technologies. But if we get paid more frequently, we can level up and buy more technologies. For example, the technologies in level 2. The level 2 technologies, I would say you're kind of getting in the top 10%. So not necessarily expected today in dentistry, but they will definitely level up a dental practice that has incorporated those things that a patient should expect in a dental practice in 2024. Starting off with, I think, a relatively controversial technology, which is teledentistry. Teledentistry, in my mind, is a phenomenal tool that had really poor execution during the pandemic. It really elevates the clinical quality. It elevates patients' experience. It can certainly increase ROI dramatically, and it helps our teams. However, a lot of dentists think, well, I can't do a crown prep remotely, or I can't do a root canal remotely. And obviously that's true. But when it comes to things like filling out a cosmetic questionnaire, handling dental emergencies, dental implant consults, even post-op for things like orthodontics and TMD, or oral surgery, post-operative follow-up calls, virtual consultations, it's a huge tool that dramatically increases both ROI and the observations by our patients. However, when we go to the dental practice every day and patients just kind of show up, we don't think about the 3 hours they had to take off of work to get there, or the fact that they had to bring their child to a babysitter, the inconvenience for patients, or the flip side, the convenience for patients to have a virtual visit, even if it's 5%, 2% of visits, it can be a massive boon for your practice. And being available remotely for things like emergencies is a huge deal. We talked about the statistic earlier today that about 1/3 of dental emergencies ends up in an ER. And I think that should be down to next to nothing, because the reason why is that many dental practices have, if you have a dental emergency, call 911, when we could even have a remote dentist doing these virtual consultations for pennies on the dollar. The average dental patient that goes to an ER ends up spending about $1,400 in 9 hours in an ER to be told that they have to see a dentist. I mean, that's just tragic. So level 2 technology would be to leverage teledentistry in your practice to dramatically increase clinical quality, have a much better patient experience, massive ROI for triaging patients that haven't been in for 20 years. A lot of the reason why patients haven't been in for 20 years is because they're scared. So having a safe, easy way to virtually connect with you is a great way to build trust for patients that sometimes have massive needs. Moving on to another piece of technology, CBCT scans, which I think is dramatically increases the clinical quality so much that it should be in every single practice. But when people think of CBCT, what I'd like to point out is that oftentimes of the cost of implementation, they're thinking about the ROI and how patients observe, the patient experience. And I think that that's a bit of a myth. I think it's patients kind of view radiographs as the purview of the clinician. So like how we do what we do is kind of like how the sausage is made, not necessarily what patients really, well, some patients, engineer mindset may love looking at the CBCT, but for the most part, the biggest advantage of CBCT is in the very first pillar, in the quality. We can just do a much better job by identifying things in technology and by using CBCT technology. So that's a great example too of a technology that's additive, which we'll talk about in a bit. Very soon, actually, like right now, leveraging AI over other technologies like CBCT will dramatically increase the use cases for that technology. 1 + 1 sometimes equals 11, and that's the case when you layer on AI and CBCT and CAD/CAM. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but AI is a buzzword right now. But really, it can be a great tool to supercharge other technologies. And I think that AI and CBCT are like a peanut butter and chocolate that we haven't even experienced how great outcomes we're going to get from putting these two together. Moving on, CAD/CAM technology is a huge plus in every category, I believe. However, ROI and team health can take a hit initially because it requires a bit of training depending on how you leverage this technology. And I like talking about CAD/CAM as a good example of the fact that every single one of these categories has subcategories. Like I talked about with responsive websites, online payments is a subcategory of responsive website. CAD/CAM, you can do intraoral scanning. You can mill in your office. You can do zirconia sintering. You can do, now there's orthodontic applications. I mean, with CAD/CAM, with CBCT, there's many subcategories that you can talk about. And again, it all comes down to whether or not it's right for your practice, the way you practice dentistry at this moment in time. And so whenever you're looking at all those subcategories, should we add milling or should we send that scan out and have a crown sent back immediately? That comes down to the cost of implementation in your practice. Does this dramatically increase our clinical quality? Does it help our patient's experience? Does it affect us positively? Will we have a quick ROI or a massive ROI over time? And how will it affect our team health? And I think that when it comes to, for example, CAD/CAM technology, a big plus here for scanning, for milling, is the patient experience. It's just better in every way. Also clinical quality, but the biggest improvement with CAD/CAM that I've experienced is in the patient's experience, how patients observe the care that he has. Moving on to our last category, which is level 3. The level 3 technologies kind of put you in rare air at this moment in time. Every technology tends to go from level 3 to level 2 to level 1 to sort of expected, right? Or ubiquitous. And the best way that I can describe level 3 technology is by showing you a quick video, which you can see this biker right here. He's taken on a new technology, a new way of doing things, right? Which is a bit wacky. People might make fun of him, but in this instance, his new way of doing things, his paradigm shift of kind of going out there into a level 3 type of technology actually gets him far ahead of everybody else, right? Now, what I'd also like to point out is that there's another video that could possibly happen that this exponential technology that this person did in his bike race could have fallen and smashed his face on the curb, right? So when you're going into the level 3 technologies, just realize that oftentimes when you're at the tip of the spear, it can cut you, right? And there might be a bigger learning curve, might require higher investment of time, energy, and money to get the sort of size on the prize of implementation, right? And other people may look at you and go, I can't, like, why would you actually do that, right? But if you are an early adopter, if you're the type of person that wants to, like, buy the electric car today or buy the next phone when it first comes out, or then these types of technologies might be for you. Just know that the level of that you should incorporate level 1 and level 2 technologies, in my opinion, before you move on to level 3. For early adopters like myself, level 3 technologies can be very tempting. However, just make sure you have the patient's expectations covered first. Why? Because those technologies are quicker, easier, and have a quicker, higher ROI, such that they will pay for all the level 3 technologies. So as you go through level 1, level 2, and level 3, these get more expensive, they get more complicated. And so when that's the nice thing about going from level 1, level 2 to level 3, is that level 1 will pay for level 2, which will pay for level 3. And at the end of 2022, I saw a study that they asked a bunch of dentists what was the number 1 technology they were excited about incorporating in 2023. Think about your answer. The answer was 3D printing. Now, I love 3D printing. I have a 3D printer. In fact, I work with a 3D printing company, and it's great technology. However, it should not have been, in my opinion, what most dentists were excited about putting into their practice, right? There's so many great companies, including NDX, that can do your printing for you if you choose to use 3D printing. But if you don't have a responsive website, if you're using digital, if you're using film x-rays, if you're not using CBCT, why are you getting a 3D printer is my point, right? So great technology. However, it's, and the other thing about level 3 technology is that these technologies are improving fast. There's lots of great ways to use 3D printers now, from surgical guides and models. And I love doing occlusal guards. We do an occlusal guard for life program, where if you maintain your recall, you get a free mouth guard every time you come into our practice, because it costs about $4. But incorporate the level 1 and level 2 technologies first. Going into 2024, I would guess if you asked dentists which technology they're most excited about implementing, they would probably say AI, right? And AI is a phenomenal technology. However, again, is it the first thing people should be implementing? How it is today, I would not say yes. How it's basically reading an X-ray, it's great, but I would leverage level 1 and level 2 first, because it's really about verifying for patients what you already know to be true, in my experience, or doing things like telling you who has a crown that treatment plan that hasn't been completed, who's coming in today. I won't belabor on this because we're kind of, we have a very short time together, but there's different types of AI. So when people say AI, just know that's a marketing word. There's different types, and don't fall prey for somebody when they use the term just to sort of use the term, right? There's everything from algorithms through deep learning, and almost everybody's getting educated on this very quickly because this technology is changing so fast. But artificial intelligence, in my mind, is going to be used in so many different cases throughout dentistry. It's going to transform the industry from where it is now with, reading radiographs to now using chat GPT like LLMs, where a patient can ask an LLM, how long is it going to take for my surgical site to close? So just, I would say that these generative AI technologies are going to transform our industry quickly. And mainly what they're going to do is become tools for automation. They're going to be able to do things that humans do today. And it's going to be under the hood of everything that we do. So moving on to sort of the last point of our presentation, which is how do we sell these technologies to our team, whether they're expectation or if they're more exponential level 3 technology. Really just ask yourself one question when you're talking to either a team member or a patient. And that question is, why should they care? We get so wrapped up in maybe the clinical quality, or maybe it's just a fun tool for us to use, that when we're talking with our patients, particularly, looking at it from the lens of the patient's perspective. For example, a CBCT scan could be, we can now do your implant in 20 minutes versus 2.5 hours, or when we use our guide. Now, to a dentist, maybe hand placing an implant might be about accuracy, but in the patient's mind, they're coming to you because they trust you and they think you'll do a good job placing their implant. So it may be about time. So really deeply look at the perspective of your team member and that you're talking to. And that might be different per team member or per role in your practice. And then also look at truly not how we want patients to think about technology, but how do they truly feel? And oftentimes, more than ever, that comes down to convenience. So talking about how this technology makes their life more convenient is really going to be a big way to get buy-in from patients. And from a team member, oftentimes it's going to be about making their job easier, right? Which is very much sometimes different than our perspective as dentists. So any piece of technology, looking at the lens, the cost of implementation, and asking, why should the person that I'm talking about, like, if I had their perspective, why should they care? And as you incorporate technologies from level 1, level 2 to level 3, just realize you'll probably get a lot more engagement from your team. Nobody goes to work and think, boy, I hope my dentist is not ahead of the doesn't invest in technology. Everybody wants to work in a practice that leverages technology to make their life easier, and just realize that nobody is going to set the pace other than you. You as the dentist set the pace for the team, and so you have to be sort of the lead dog and run the fastest. And technology is like building blocks. If you think about the level 1, level 2, level 3, start off by building with the foundational elements that change the patient's experience, that give you the ROI, so that you can then build up over time. And like we talked about before, when it comes to technology, many, many times 1 + 1 = 3. CAD/CAM with CBCT is better than lots more use cases than any one separately. So sometimes when you're thinking about a technology, think about the other technologies in your practice. And any piece of technology you get, you'll have exponential growth over time. So when you're thinking about the ROI or your team health, sometimes you have to look into the future and think, what will this be like in a year? After leveraging this technology in a year, where will we be? Not just next month. So just to recap quickly, because I want to have time for questions. Start by mastering your personal and collaborative productivity, like we talked about in the last of this series. The question about technology oftentimes isn't what technology to incorporate, but in what order and when. So that you can then do sort of a crawl, walk, run approach with each one of these technologies, add the fundamental technology to your practice, and then supportive technologies. Fundamental from the patient's perspective and from quality of care. Leverage the cost framework to evaluate new technologies when that technology is going to be right for you. And then lastly, ask what's in it for them whenever you're presenting technology to a patient, to your team members. Thank you very much. Thank you, NDX, for all you do for dentistry.